Let's see. Hey, Michael, what do you want to talk about next?
I
What was
want to
your
talk about A Vanishing Fog.
A Vanishing Fog? Very good.
Oh,
I did. Yeah. Tell us about A Vanishing Fog.
it's as poetic as it sounds. It's made by a very talented young director from Columbia who's gotten a lot of recognition in the country. But he's gone ahead and has filmed a movie in a very remote part of the world, which has not, to my understanding, had ever had anything filmed in it, much less a narrative feature film. The film is narrative. It borders on experimental, but in the end, it is a narrative feature. It is mostly nonverbal. Like if they have, they don't usually have any dialogue in it. There's usually a little bit of on screen. It's sort of written narration on screen where a couple of sentences will come up to go ahead and reflect what we assume is either the characters or the filmmakers' inner thoughts on this. But the majority of the film is nonverbal and it's shot in an area high up in the Andes in Colombia, where there is, it's sort of as high as you can get before you start getting snow. And it's got a very unusual type of climate, which allows, like a sort of a very lush tundra landscape, which apparently, like is an area where there's a lot of evolution going ahead and occurring. Unfortunately, that area and the people who, like lived there for generations, making, like going and surviving up there, like doing farm work and stuff. The whole area is being destroyed by the strip mining of the area. They, go ahead and they just, like tear up mountains and blow things up and strip mine the heck out of it, destroying what is, like apparently the largest tropic climate type of its kind in the world. But also, there's the horrible rebel wars in Colombia, where the government's constantly doing airstrikes against rebel bases and such like that. So, like there's constantly stuff blowing up. It focuses on a guy who is like sort of a herder up there, who's, like taking care of his ailing father, who used to run the farm up there, but now is suffering from, like mental deterioration and is barely there. And the kid, like he seems like he's maybe in his 20s or maybe even early 30s, goes ahead and feels that his way of life is completely doomed, and that the only hope is to one day go ahead and live on another planet. So he listens to programs to learn English at night because he feels that, like English is the language of astronauts. So there's already kind of a science fictiony type feel. And like things just go ahead and get worse and worse and worse until it's time to go and hit the stars. Basically, though, what we're dealing with is we've got a sort of a twinning between the deterioration of the environment versus the to sort of go ahead and match up with the deterioration of father's mind, because he's feeling, like sort of both things are twined at once. Like once his father disappears, the way of life disappears, the land disappears. And it's not optimistic at all. It's, like lots of phrases like all miracles are over, everything is going to end. And then, of course, we're not even talking about the surreal imagery like the escalators going up from the jungle up into the, like the sky, or the real Lynchian imagery, where there's a scene where there is a scene where some with some fruit that you think, well, goodness, this would almost be interpreted as sexual if you had this sort of frame of mind. And then there's a later scene with food where you realize, nope, it wasn't my interpretation. That's exactly where we're going, and we're going at it full throttle. So there's some very Lynchian type moments in this. Essentially, like the real star of the show, though, is this area that has barely ever been filmed. and is absolutely gorgeous. It's got all of these weird alien plants in it, with lots of colors and these mists hanging around the mountains. And just the director does not skimp upon the actual, like environmental shots, capturing what might be our last chance to sort of capture these sorts of images. The same way that terrible movie Monstroid back in 1980, where he is able to film David Carradine in a priest outfit inside of a church that's never been filmed inside of before. That's apparently from the Middle Ages in Columbia, and that's actually our only record of what the inside of that place looks like because they don't allow photography in there. It's the same thing. We've got a like undeniable sort of time capsule, but this movie has a lot more than just a nature show. I think that honestly, we've got something which is almost bordering on cult level in terms of the unusualness of the imagery and the big wacko payoff at the end. It gets very weirdy at the end right there. But honestly, we've got something which I would pretty much put an alert out to all musicians to go ahead and give a spin, because this has got that kind of Baraku or Kawalakatsi type experimental film that could cross over into the cult realm, due to not only, like the strangeness of some of the sequences, but also just, like in terms of being able to express a completely doomed viewpoint, and being able to, like rail against it, but also, like living actively in it while you're just watching everything falling apart. If there's not a doom band in the world that I don't think would go ahead and benefit from watching this movie, to know, like so get an idea of to what we're really talking about when we're talking about doom.
So that's interesting because it sounds like this movie is shot on location, and they're bringing in kind of like alien elements, or is am I getting that
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah.
yes they do. They, not only is the landscape would be something that would be completely alien to nearly anyone watching it, because we're going to see some stuff filmed that we've never seen before, but the movie at very early on in the movie brings a science fiction element into it,
Mhm.
to where like this like herder up in the mountains in the Andes is trying to figure out some way to go ahead and construct some sort of
Yeah.
spaceship in order to go ahead and get away. And it gets very weird in certain areas, to where we
So
get past just, like sort of the more environmental or the more social aspects,
right.
and we get more into sort of, like basically a visual poem. I do know that the director dedicated the movie to his father, who there's some sort of inference that the director's father, like maybe was going through the same thing that the character's father was in the movie, and trying to make a bigger point with sort of creating, like sort of someone's interior destruction as, like the destruction of a landscape, particularly when that's her father. Having had a father that died of
Mhm.
Alzheimer's, I can totally get it. But yeah, no, this is definitely something which is, like a top shelf in terms of artistry, very important in terms of the environment, like the landscape shots that were captured, but purely something that needs to head to straight to Cult Town, in terms of what kind of appeal it can have, both, like to the people who enjoy unusual cinema,
Yeah.
and also to musicians who definitely enjoy unusual cinema.
All right. Very cool. That sounds like a recommendation to me. All
Yeah.
right.
Oh,